it likes humidity in the like 50 to 60 range. That's optimal for it. But they can survive anywhere from 5% humidity to 90% humidity. If it goes below 5% or above 90, they're not happy. They'll pretty much die. So when you get like big rain events or something, you know, they're gonna die off. But they won't completely die. I mean, not all of them. So they feed on mature flush on the upper surface, and they have the distinctive stippling. And it's estimated that they can destroy cells, destroy 18 to 22 cells per minute, which kind of gives you an idea of how damaging they can be. Because if you multiply that by 100 mites, that's pretty bad. So citrus rust mites, they're most abundant from March to June. The other spider mite species, like the two-spotted, they start tapering off in May. They like conditions. The citrus red mites are a little bit hardier. But then again, that depends on what kind of temperature and humidity that we're having. They feed on the lower leaf surface. The pink rust mites, they usually the populations start exploding after a mild winter. They'll start exploding a little earlier than the citrus rust mite, but after the citrus rust mite gets going, they will outcompete the pink citrus rust mite. So the one you really need to worry about is the citrus rust mite. So what they do is they'll feed on the upper epidermis, and they destroy the epidermal cells, and then that causes the cuticle to lose like its gloss, and you get that bronzing color. And they do the same thing with the fruit. Now on the fruit, if they feed on young fruit that's growing, the fruit will, because the fruit's still trying to grow around it, it'll split and it'll fracture, and then you get what they call a shark skin, because it's a really rough texture, and it'll be dark also. But if it feeds on older fruit, the epidermal cells don't break down as much, and so it just leaves the bronzy color, and it doesn't really affect the taste of the fruit, or, well, it can, and I'll explain that in a minute. But it doesn't really affect the inside of the fruit too much. It's more of an aesthetic thing, but markets don't like that. Consumers don't like that. They're like, what's wrong with this? So it is a real problem. Broad mites, like I said, they feed on the apical meristem. They mostly feed on young flesh, on citrus, on some other plants like peppers. They really like the young developing fruit. They have toxic saliva, so the saliva will actually make the plant elongate. And so what happens first is you see kind of like drooping or wilting. And so you might think, oh, that's water damage, that's water stress. But then, after, like, if you water it or something and the plant doesn't pick up, then okay, that's not water stress, that's something else. And if it keeps on, a lot of people think that it's like pesticides. But if you haven't sprayed any pesticides, or what pesticide you did spray, and the injuries that you should have, that's kind of like, okay, it's not pesticide injury. But a lot of times it can be confused with other things. So basically the leaves become distorted and feathered. The terminals have delayed dieback just because of the saliva and that toxin is the leaves are still trying to grow. And when I've seen it before in the greenhouses, because they love greenhouses, they like humidity. Their optimal conditions is greenhouse conditions. They like humidity like 60 to 70%, warm but not too hot. When I've seen it, it looks like somebody just went and snapped the plant and it's just hanging, it's just dangling. Because the first time I saw it, I was like, what in the world is that? And then they told me it was broadnights. If they feed on the buds, then you get rosettes and witch's broom, and if they get to the fruit, you'll have, it's kind of silver colored and reduced growth. There is, ma'am.
What time of year do you see these?
So they would probably be more April, May, June. There is no established action threshold for broad mites, so it's kind of a judgment call. And I don't know if I mentioned, but they're primarily a problem in greenhouses and very young plants. Okay, so mite sampling methods. There's several, and this is kind of holds true for insect sampling methods too. There's several different approaches. There's the percentage approach, where basically you just kind of get a percentage of the fruit and leaves that are infested, or leaves that are infested. So you go and you say, okay, that leaves, I have 5 leaves out of like 100 or something that are infested. They either have it or they don't have it. The qualitative rating scale, where you just estimate your population densities, so you just kind of have something in your mind and you look at it and you say, okay, that's low, that's medium, that's high. It's not a qualitative thing. Then you have individual mite counts, where you go and you randomly select some fruit and you look at it and you count every single mite or insect that's on the fruit. So the first 2 methods are rapid, they're not qualitative, and they do not count for seasonal population fluctuations. The third method is the most common, but it's kind of tedious and it's a little impractical. To avoid bias in sampling, you really need to sample representative areas as far as like varieties, similar varieties, similar management practices, and you want to avoid border rows. Now, I know that's kind of hard to do in a home setting, but where you don't have many trees. But the thing, like if you have, a lot of trees, the thing with the border rows and the outer edges is they have what they call the edge effect. So you'll either have more insects because that's where, or mites, because that's where they're coming to first. Or in some pests, in some situations where they're like the interior, then you won't have as many because they're migrating to the interior. So those are things to think about, and then of course you want to randomly select. So there is a horsefall Barrett system, which they have modified, and they use it for citrus rust mite sampling. And so basically it goes by a standardized key. So if you have, so if you have a 10x hand lens and you look at the fruit, and whatever you see within that viewing area, that's what you count. So if it's 0, of course it's 0. If it's less than 5, you give it a 1. If it's like, it's kind of exponential. So basically what you do is you look at 20 trees, and let's say you have a 10-acre block. So if you have less than that, you want to figure that out. But so you randomly look at 20 trees in a 10-acre block, and you want to divide your trees into quadrants. So you have your north, south, east, and west. And the reason for that is because sometimes they like the north side of the tree. Some of them, you know, it depends on whether they like more sun or less sun and the growing conditions. So to get a good estimate of what you really have, you need to check all sides of your tree. So you get one fruit per quadrant. You want to go mid-canopy because, again, you know, you don't want that. When you're looking for mites, that's probably where they're going to be, is mid-canopy. So you look at mid-canopy, you record the number of rust mites per centimeter squared. That should be squared, sorry. And then you average the 80 ratings over 10 trees. You monitor every 2 to 3 weeks. The thresholds for citrus rust mite. For fresh fruit, if you're taking it to the market, is 2 mites per centimeter squared. And if you have that, you need to treat, because it's because the mites can just the populations can explode so quickly. Now on processed fruit, you can handle a little more. If you see 6 mites per centimeter squared, then you need to make a plan that you need to treat soon. And then if you have 10 mites per centimeter squared, that's your action threshold, so you need to treat. And the reason you say, well, it doesn't matter what the rind looks like for juicing, but eventually so they're drawing water out of the fruit, and as they draw water out, somehow it affects the acid ratio, and so it will eventually affect the taste of the juice, and that's the reason why there is a threshold for processed fruit. For spider mites, it's sort of a similar thing, a little bit different. So with spider mites, if you had, let's say you look at, you have 10 acres, 1 acre, and you look at 10 trees. And so you would have to do, 10 trees per acre. But if you do like 5 to 10 trees per area, then you can look at less and more leaf samples. You can look at less trees. So what you need to, so for example, if you examine 4 leaves per tree from 6 trees per area, and then you have 4 areas over like a 10 acre block, then you just looked at 96 leaves on 24 trees per 10 acres. Now, that's at the beginning of the season when your populations are low and you're only finding 1, 2, maybe 5 mites. As the season progresses and your mite population starts exploding, you don't need to look at that many trees. So it decreases. The more mites that you have, the less trees you have to look at. So with spider mite thresholds, 1 motile spider mite per leaf equals a leaf infestation. 5 motile spider mites per leaf is considered a 70 to 80% leaf infestation. Your action threshold is 5 to 10 mites per leaf between September and May. That's because, again, they like moderate temperatures and moderate humidity. In the summer, it depends on the summer, it depends on your temperature and your humidity as to whether or not you're going to have a mite population. Your mite populations, or spider mites, usually in the fall and in the spring are when they're the most prevalent. So there is no action threshold for in the growing season that they've established. So you just kind of have to base it on temperature, humidity, tree health. Take everything into consideration and make your own decision. So there are a lot of beneficials and predators predators and parasitoids that do a very good job of controlling mites. A lot of them are natural, and then sometimes if they need a little help, there are some that you can purchase and to boost the population. This is over here is a type of lady beetle. It's a larvae of a lady beetle. Who knew that lady beetles are not all red with black polka dots? There are a lot of different colored lady beetles out there. So that's a minute pirate bug. They do an awesome job on mites. Persimilis, they will feed on the spider mites. They really like red mites. I don't know why they seem to have a preference for red mites, but they do. And then the species Peregrinus is a mite, is a predaceous mite that will feed on rust mites and broad mites. Also, Persitella is an entomopathogenic fungus that will work on mites.
How do they apply?
Then if you have to move into your chemical controls, use, try to go with petroleum oil first, or in the winter you could go with dormant oils, your horticultural oils, and then, you might need to put an acaricide out. Your goal is to only have to put out one treatment of acaricide, and then but a lot of it depends on the year too.
How are the biologic controls applied?
So like it's a granular formulation, and you just kind of like mix it up with water and then just spray it. Yes, and different ones are different formulations. But you need to be careful with your acaricides. Rotate your modes of action, because mites build up resistance extremely quickly, because they have so many populations per year. Yeah, they're crazy. I mean, insects are bad. Mites are like 5 times worse.
Does neem oil have any effect?
Yes, it can. Yeah. Y'all, those that were on the tour yesterday, I'm sure y'all saw a lot of citrus leaf miners, because I saw a lot of citrus leaf miners out there. The adult citrus leaf miner, she lays eggs, usually on, so she likes young flesh, and young trees. Usually they like trees that are under 3 years old. The more mature trees, they are not as bad of a problem with, and the reason is because the trees don't flush uniformly. On young trees, the flush is more uniform. So this is an egg right there. You can barely see it, but they lay their eggs on the underside of the leaves next to the midrib. The larvae hatches. It starts feeding. Well, it tunnels into the leaf, and then it just lives its life inside the leaf, just tunneling around as happy as it can be. Serpentine patterns. It molts 3 times, and that's the only time it comes out of the leaf. On the final molt, it will emerge. It will roll itself into the corner of the leaf, pupate, and then there is like 2, it kind of goes through 2 pupal phases, and then it emerges as an adult and does it all over again. Let's see. I think that was it. Okay, so control. There is a parasitic wasp that is very good at parasitizing citrus leaf miner. It is a specialist. Most predators do not do a good job with the leaf miner, just because the larvae is inside the leaf, so they can't get to it. But this little guy right here, he does a really good, or she does a really good job. Then there is the catch and release, or the attract and kill traps, which we kind of saw that yesterday. There are two different systems out there that have been patented and are sold. There's the SWAT CLM, which uses, so it has pheromone to attract them, and then it uses this compound called splat, which is really sticky, gray, messy stuff, but they'll get stuck on that splat and then they can't get out, so it kills them. There is another system out there, Malex, which uses imidacloprid. They put imidacloprid in it, and so you get like a little more kill power. Let's see. So if you need to go with chemical on the young trees, you can use systemic insecticides such as imidacloprid. You can do a soil drench around the tree. That way you're not disturbing, you're not killing your beneficials. You're delivering it straight to the tree, and it's gonna the larvae is gonna get it when it feeds. But the problem with that is that it does take time for the tree to, take it up. So you have to factor that in. And also think of the timing when you apply it. So you don't want to apply it when you see a lot of pupa out there, because it's not going to have any effect whatsoever on the adults. And it won't kill the pupal form. It also won't kill it doesn't have ovicidal properties. So, you want to target your larvae. On older trees, you have to use foliar sprays. And again, you want to consider your timing. Okay, so aphids. I used to rear aphids, and they were kind of fun to rear. But they were actually, of my insects, they were the easiest to rear. I'll put it that way, because all I did was I gave them a plant, and they were just happy little larks, because they don't, they do asexual reproduction. They have little mini-me's all over the place. They it's live birth. And so anyway, but they are not very good for your plants, because they eat a lot. They create a lot of honeydew. So they produce honeydew through these, well, no, okay. This right here is called a cotta, and that is what produces, that's where they excrete the honeydew. These right here are cornicles, and that is, they're little tubes, and they use that to produce pheromones to attract, other aphids, especially like winged aphids when they're trying to attract them. And also they use it as alarm, like alarm system kind of. So if they get disturbed, they're putting out all kind of pheromones and everything. It's kind of like their cry for help. Okay, so the brown citrus aphid is probably of the ones on here. The brown citrus aphid is probably the worst. And the reason I say that is because they all feed the same, they all do the same thing, but these guys can transmit citrus tristasia virus. Now, as Dr. Shapiro said, a lot of varieties are resistant to that now, so I don't think it's something that the scientific field is as concerned about as they used to be. When I first went down to Florida, that was the big thing, citrus tristasia virus. There were three big things when I went down there: citrus tristasia virus, CTV, the canker, and Dicrepes breviatus, aka citrus fruit beetle. Now they're worried about other things. Not worried about this anymore. So, I mean, a little bit, but not that. But, okay, so the way you can tell these apart, if you really want to, is you can't go by color because the brown and the black, they usually are darker. They're dark brown to black, but they're so similar that it's really hard to tell. So one way to tell is if you squish one, the brown citrus aphid leaves a reddish brown stain, which is very unique because nothing else, no other aphids in that genera produce that stain. The black citrus aphids do not produce that stain. So that's one easy way to tell. And then if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, you have to look at the, well, I'm pointing to this, I'm pointing to this one because it's easier to see on this one, but they all have it. So you have to look at the cotta, and you have to actually count the number of hairs on the cotta. So it's very tedious. The green citrus aphid and the melon aphid, same thing. They're mottled. Usually they're green, but they can even be kind of a brownish, depending on what they feed on. And again, you have the same thing. So they are very prolific little guys. And okay, so damage. To monitor, you want to conduct surveys early in the flushing season because they like the flush. So as soon as your plants start putting out new flush in the spring, that's when you need to start looking for these guys. Indicators, if you see ants running up and down your tree and you're like, what is that ant doing? Look for aphids because they like to farm the aphids. Why? Because they like the honeydew. And so it's free meal for them. They'll actually guard and protect the aphids. And then sooty mold grows on honeydew, which I'm sure y'all are all familiar with sooty mold. And it's just a mess. So if you see that, then you probably have a very high infestation of aphids. And hopefully you will control them before it gets to that point. The threshold is 50% of expanding terminals infested. The young trees are more susceptible than the older trees. Again, it has to do with the fact that the younger trees flush uniformly, the older trees do not. But that doesn't mean you won't see it on an older tree. It just means the young are more susceptible. There are tons of beneficials that love aphids. Lady beetles just snack on them left and right. They just love them. Lacewings and the hoverfly larvae, they're big aphid connoisseurs. That's like ice cream to them. So when you are trying to make decisions as to whether you need to use chemical control or not, figure out what caused the problem. You know, if it was something that you're doing as far as your, your management style, maybe you need to change something. If there's going to be a big weather event coming up, wait till after the weather event to spray, because after the weather event, you might not have to spray. It might blow them all to kingdom come. So there is no action threshold set for scale. You just have to use your own judgment. And then make sure you base it on the live scale, because as you may remember, I mentioned that they leave their dead molts behind, or their dead skins or casings. So there's going to be lots of dead casings, but you need to look for the live ones. And also when you're spraying, try to spray when there are crawlers, because that's when you're going to it's gonna be the most effective. Okay, so I guess I've kind of already covered this, but, let's see. Oh, again, spot treating is good. Make sure you, calibrate, you know, your sprayer, your ground speed, you know, all that stuff. Your goal is to control and manage, not eliminate, because scale, there is some resistance going on with scale also. Well, with all of these things, there's a resistance, but scale can develop resistance fairly quickly too. And so if you're going for complete annihilation, then you're probably going to create a larger problem than if you hadn't even messed with it. Well, maybe not quite as big of a problem, but you're creating a problem. Okay, so mealybugs.
So after you get success with denial and resolutions,
Oh, yeah, just brushing them off. Yeah,
just put it on to the rock. But it works.
that's a good idea.
I didn't spray anything.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Back to the scale. Is there a biologic solution to scale? Or is it-
There are a few. There are a few. Not as many as like some of the other things, because they do have the armored scaler is actually easier for the beneficials to handle, but there are a few for even the soft scale. Okay, so mealybugs, they sap when you flow them. They reduce plant vigor. They excrete sticky honeydew and wax, which reduces plant fruit quality and the plant quality overall. So mealybugs are very similar to scale, but they're a little different. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, they're a little different in that mealybugs have like these ridges, and they're like, if you look at them under a hand lens, it takes a little practice, but once you look at a few under the hand lens, you can tell the difference between a mealybug and a scale. The mealybugs do have like they do have like a waxy layer, but it's not hard like it's not tough like the scale. And the mealybugs will all stages of mealybugs are mobile. So they will move. They don't like, a lot of the adults, especially the adults females, they don't like to move, but you can make them move. You play with them a little bit, they'll move. They think you're gonna kill them, they'll move. They love to cracks and crevices. They love to like hide, where two fruit touch. Anywhere, in between like the leaf and the stem. Any little protected nook and cranny they can find, that's where they like to hang out. The males are the only stage that have wings. Well, there are some mealybugs this is a citrus mealybug, by the way, that I'm specifically talking about. But mealybugs in general are very similar, just a little, sort of like the scale. They're very similar, they just are a little bit different as far as their morphology to identify. But, and then each one might have its own little tweak on the life cycle or something. But they're pretty similar. There's 3 nymph stages. So on these, the males have wings, the females don't, and sometimes the males will actually like carry the nymphs to different places. And then another thing, fun fact, is sometimes the nymphs will hitch rides on the back of the females, and then other times the mealybugs will hitchhike on other insects. So they're big fans of hitchhiking. let's see, they hatch between 6 and 10 days. A female can lay 300 to 600 eggs during her lifetime. They deposit it then in groups of 5 to 20. The females live up to 29 days. And let's see. The males only live like 2 days, and they don't feed during that time. They just mate and then they die. Okay, mealybug control. There is this lady beetle here, Cryptolemus. They are nicknamed the mealybug destroyer because they will just, I forget how many mealybugs they can eat, but it's like phenomenal how many they can eat in a day. They just like go crazy. This guy right here, or lady, is a parasitic wasp that does a pretty good job of parasitizing them. Both of these you can actually buy commercially. Let's see. So again, if you have to go to chemical controls, try to use narrow spectrum fungicides, insecticides. Sorry, I'm getting tired of things. I don't think I've talked this long in a long time. Over my time yet?
Close.
Okay. Okay, we're almost to the end. So, okay. Contact materials will kill the larvae and young nymphs, but they have little efficacy on the adults. Okay, so Asian citrus psyllid, I don't think that that's a problem y'all have yet, and I hope y'all don't have it, but I wanted y'all to know what they look like just in case, so y'all can be on the lookout, because I know a few years ago there were a couple found in the Charleston area. So the Asian citrus psyllid, and I used to read these, so I'm real familiar with these things. They're really cool actually to look at them. They orient themselves at almost a 90-degree angle to the leaf or the stem that they're on. They like flush. They lay their eggs on flush that's in the feather stage. The smaller the flush, the more happy they are. And they will lay their eggs right in between, like right where, when it's just starting to come out, they'll put it right in the like kind of crevice, and it's hard to see. And the eggs are kind of football shaped. They're a really light yellow, so it's very hard to see. But if you've looked at as many as I have, I can spot them pretty good. There are 5 nymph stages. The problem with these is, I thought I had another animation here, but that's okay. The problem is that with these is that they transmit the bacteria, Celos, Candidus libiribacter, which causes Huang Long Bean. Huang Long Bean is citrus greening, also known in Asia as the yellow tail of the dragon. The yellow tail of the dragon. And the reason is because if you look at a tree that has Huang Long Bean, the way the shape of the tree is kind of like the tail of a dragon, and the yellowing starts kind of on the outside, and so it'll just be kind of like a yellow pattern, and it just kind of looks like that. And then of course America, we have to call it citrus greening, something different. I'm not sure where that came from or why, but anyway, so control, there is a parasitic wasp that does a really good job of controlling them. The problem is that there are so many psyllid that it can't keep up, and so they have to use pesticides, because psyllid, they're unreal how many they reproduce, and how fast they reproduce. And another fact is that the way the psyllid transmit the virus, is the exact same way that aphids transmit, the bacteria is the exact same way that aphids transmit, virus. They have piercing, sucking mouth parts. So think of a syringe, and you're giving somebody a shot. So the syringe goes in, whatever is on the outside of that syringe goes in. When you pull, you draw the blood out, and then if that syringe went and sterilized, or you use that same syringe on somebody else, whatever's on that syringe is going back into the versal system. Another thing about psyllids is that they actually stick. It's kind of like a straw. So they actually leave part of their stylet in the plant every time they feed, and so they're constantly like making new straws basically, and they just stick it down in the plant, and the reason they do that is because it keeps the plant cells from collapsing, and so they just have this little straw down in there. So every time they stick a straw down, whatever goes in comes out. Now the bacteria does have to replicate in the psyllid, so they say in 30 days the bacteria can be transmitted from the adult to the leaf to the immature, in the whole, and have the replication and everything, like considering all that, it's less than 30 days. Okay, so they're the reason that this area, the citrus around here, is under quarantine. Another bad one is Diaprepes abbreviatus, and they like to feed on citrus. They like to feed on any kind of fruit tree, and they have a host range that's, I think, like 600 plants or something like that. Actually, it's no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of something else. It's 270 plants across 50 plant families. There are okay, so Diaprepes abbreviatus, the adults feed on the leaves, the larvae feed on the roots. So the whole life cycle revolves around whatever plant that they are hosting on. So if the roots are being fed on, the leaves are being fed on, it's pretty bad when you're cleaning. The adults can lay up to 300 eggs they lay egg masses. They can lay anywhere from like 5 to 300 eggs per mass, and then the eggs hatch. So what they do is really cool actually. They'll sandwich it between the leaf. The larvae hatch, they fall down to the ground, they burrow down to the roots, they start feeding on the roots. So then they develop, and it takes like 3 to 4 months under optimal conditions in the summer for them to go from the time they hatch to pupation. It takes another 2 to 3 weeks for them to pupate and develop as adults. So then there are, in Florida, there's between 2 and 3 emergencies per major emergencies per year or per summer growing cycle, and that depends on the weather. But I mean, they're constantly. If you go to a grove that's invested with them, they're constantly. But that's just kind of mass emergencies. And let's see. There. Okay, so this one's the fun one. So there are some parasitic nematodes that will feed on the larvae. So they do use that. And then the problem Oh, and then they can use like Persitella, and also there's another pathogenic fungus that they use, Bavaria bassiana, that will kill them. The problem is that it's not, the adults, there's no, except for birds and maybe spiders, there are no beneficials that will kill the adults, which is, the, what's above ground. So, they do have to use pesticides to kill them. But, and I'm not sure, I think they are quarantined as well, I'm not 100% sure.
They've come through our extension office before.
Okay.
I've
But
reported them.
anyway, they're around, but hopefully y'all have problems with it. Okay, so in conclusion, just scout and monitor for pests, ID them correctly, manage for biocontrols, beneficials are your friend. If you're gonna, if you need, use make sure you have reached action thresholds before you apply pesticides. Try to use selective and systemic pesticides, and then always follow the label, apply at label rates, and rotate modes of action. Do not use them back to back, because that is probably the number one way that the insects will develop resistance, and if they get resistant to a pesticide, then you keep them. So, and then a good source is the 2024-2025 Florida citrus production. Thank you for your
I have
attention.
a question. On the biologic, on using biologic insects, is that something you have to do annually, or once you establish them, they will be available?
So sometimes, once they're established, if you have, so the main thing with those, the beneficials, is they need a nectar source and they need a food source. So as long as you can manage for that and have that readily available, it is possible to get them established and they'll stick around. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in the winter, but yeah. So theoretically, yes. Most of the time, if you're bringing in beneficials or releasing them, you do have to release more than once. Are there any other questions?
Yes, those citrus greening bugs,
Yes, sir. The silage. Yes, sir.
the psyllids, how far north can they go temperature wise?
So they can handle, they've done studies where they can handle temperature, they can survive short term temperatures at freezing if they can find a place to, hunker down and hide or whatever. Now, long term, they can't handle, several days, they cannot handle that cold weather.
I doubt they're at your house.
They do not,
That's one advantage you got.
they do not, they will not reproduce, during that, time. They have to have a bit warmer to complete the whole life cycle. But yeah, if they can find a, little cozy niche, they can overwinter.
We're in the upstate,
So yeah, you probably don't have to worry about them. Most likely, you do not have to worry about them. Now, however, Diaprepes, you might need to worry about them.
the who?
The citrus root weevil. They can withstand colder temperatures. And in fact, fun fact, they have citrus root weevils in the Mall of America, which is up in somewhere.
Minneapolis.
Yeah, in Minneapolis. And they were brought in because apparently in the mall they have a little garden area or something, and they were brought in on some citrus. This was way back. And yeah, because at the time I was working for the senior scientist that was doing his research on citrus and the citrus Diaprepes, and he had to go up there and check it out and everything. He got all excited. He's like, oh, you're gonna be all over the place. But he decided that they probably wouldn't live in, you know, they probably couldn't exist outside there, so they were okay just hanging around in the mall. He was very worried for a while.
All right, with respect to time and what we have going on this afternoon, we'll kind of break for lunch. Be back at 1:15. We'll have the vendors, I'm assuming they might be here, still selling stuff. We got plenty of raffle tickets left. I'd like to see that whole roll going.